Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Guys Podcast. First episode back. We're glad that you're with us. And today we've got very special guests. We're going to be talking about a lot of great topics, so just stay tuned.
Sit back, turn it up and let it ride. Tune in any day or any night. You need to hit the like and please subscribe right now, cause you hanging with the guys.
All right, welcome. My name is Chris Poole. With me, I've got Caleb, my brother Caleb Pullam. I'll introduce our guests as well in a second. Just to reintroduce our podcast, we had a season 0 is what I like to call it. It's just kind of a test run. We were just going through, seeing how we liked it, things that we can improve on. Took quite a bit of a break due to COVID. But this is just meant to be a safe space for men of color to kind of express our points of view without judgment, to retouch on the topics that we'll focus on is, sometimes sports, we'll talk about music, tech, but we really want to focus on relationships and growth topics more this season than we did in the past. And if you ever have any questions, you can reach out to us at theguyspodcast@aol.com. But without any further ado, today's guest is no stranger to the podcast. If you've watched us in the past, my father, I'm sure that's no secret as well. He's been a pastor for 21 years, currently serving community of Fort Worth, Texas, and is near completion of his ED, Doctorate of Education for Community Care and Counseling. And we're very happy to have him with us today. I'll let Caleb introduce himself, and then
Hey, I'm Caleb. I was here last season. Nothing's changed.
Well, welcome. We'll get right into it. Let's talk about sports for a few minutes. Talk about the NBA season that just kicked off. Predict a winner of each conference and why, and sum it up in 10 words. So for me, I'll start it off. I'm going to try to be as non-biased as possible. So in the East, I think, and the West, it's really dependent on health. So in the West, I would say it's the Lakers, with a caveat that Klay Thompson doesn't come back 100%. Klay Thompson comes back 100%, it's the Warriors. In the East, it's the Brooklyn Nets if Kyrie Irving comes back. And if not, then I would say it's the Chicago Bulls.
Oh, wow.
Chicago Bulls.
Okay. So I'm going to go with something different for the Western Conference. If the Lakers are able to pull it together, it's obviously the Lakers. They have the most talent, but I'd say the kind of dark horse candidate that I have for the Western Conference is the Dallas Mavericks. They've been steadily improving. Luka Doncic is that guy, and I think that they might be able to pull it together with Jason Kidd at the helm, I should say. And the Eastern Conference, it's hard to overlook the Milwaukee Bucks. They're good. They're very good, and I don't think that Brooklyn's going to be able to pull it together, even though Brooklyn does have a lot of talent. But I like that Bulls pick.
Yeah.
Well, I can't deny the Los Angeles Lakers. Historically speaking, that was my uncle's team, so I grew up watching them. So there's kind of a lot of respect and nostalgia there. However, now that I'm in North Texas and I like Luka Doncic and Jason Kidd is now with them, I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks in the West. And I'm like Caleb, and I can't believe I'm the one saying this because I've never really had a thing for the Milwaukee Bucks until now that I'm gone. Something about them, I just kind of like them. Brooklyn Nets, this is not my thing. I don't think they'll get it together, and I'm not going to say I hope that they do. So those are my two, Dallas and the Bucks, Milwaukee Bucks.
Yeah, I mean, I like the Bucks as well. Obviously live in Milwaukee. I love Giannis and everything he stands for. I just don't think that if you look at the Brooklyn Nets, if they're even a little bit more healthy, they win that series last year. And James Harden was playing on one leg. He missed some time in the series. And Kevin Durant was an inch away from still winning single-handedly. So Kevin Durant's still the greatest scorer in the history of the game, in my opinion. And that has not changed and will not change.
But there's just a lot of holes.
The whole history of the game?
Yes.
There's a lot of holes in the game of the Brooklyn Nets,
He's
though.
very good, though.
I
No,
agree.
I don't, and I got to throw this in because I'm the old school guy on the guys podcast tonight. So I actually don't hate the Chicago Bulls comment and pick either because understand I graduated high school in 1989, so I was in high school in their stretch and in their run with Jordan, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So it would be kind of nostalgia again if they did, if they found a way to kind of just get a rhythm and get a chemistry going. It would be kind of cool to see them go again. I don't know anybody on their team really, but
Yeah,
that would be cool too.
they've got a good team. They got Zach LaVine, who averaged like 32 points in one season, 30 points at some stretch, and then they kind of dropped off. They picked up DeMar DeRozan from the Spurs. They got
Oh,
Lonzo Ball, the Ball brother,
oh,
Alex
Caruso from the
Kobe White.
Lakers. They have the big man. They've got a good team,
I'm finna say they got some people.
but Kevin Durant is 7 feet tall
Yeah,
and can dribble
I will have
and
to see
shoot,
it to believe it.
and so
he's
uh,
got, but it always happens when we don't expect it. When you've been playing a good while, all of a sudden it's just like he's not having the kind of season he normally has. And I'm not saying that he won't because he's phenomenal. He is Christian, one of the best. But I do think at any given moment in any given season from now out, everybody's gonna be like, man, like maybe it's time for him to finally kind of start slowing down.
yeah, I
And
mean he did have a
like you
major
said,
injury.
injuries and all that, you just never know.
That is
But
for sure.
like you said, but if Brooklyn comes fine oil tune machine, they're on all hitting on all cylinders, it's pretty much a wrap.
Yeah.
Even for the Bucks and everybody else, unfortunately.
So yeah, we'll move on. We can revisit this once we get towards April and May, towards the playoff time. But I mean, I'm sure all those teams will be in the mix, and this is one of the most exciting seasons. We had the 75th season, so we'll
Right.
revisit that, and we'll go and talk about some tech with the MacBook.
So,
Well,
Apple.
we know who starts that.
So Apple has recently unveiled their new MacBook Pro lineup, and this is kind of a big deal because it's the biggest refresh that they've had in the MacBook lineup for quite a while. So with this new reveal, that they've also revealed that they've have new processors, CPUs that they are putting out with these. So there's the M1 Pro and the M1 Max, both of which are substantially more powerful than the chips that they are currently putting in their computers, which were substantially more powerful than the chips that were in the computers before. So it's just they're kind of building on top of each other. So the new MacBooks are a 14-inch and a 16-inch MacBook for 2021, starting at the price of $2,000, going all the way up to $2,500 for the top of the line spec'd out version. So you can get up to 64 gigs of RAM in these laptops, up to 8 terabytes of storage in these laptops. And they've also added back a better keyboard. They've added back their HDMI ports. They've added a brand new high fidelity headphone jack to these computers. And they've added an impeccable 120 hertz screen that's going to be micro LED, I want to say. I might have got that wrong, but it's going to be basically on par with their $1,000 plus Pro HDR display, or Pro XDR display. So it's going to be a phenomenal laptop. So the question is, for $2,000 plus, are you going with Mac or are you going somewhere else?
That'll let you start.
I have never had a MacBook. Anytime I've ever handled one, it was someone else's. So I think the only advantage that any other company, any other platform in the field, the only advantage they have is people like myself who are they are just Microsoft Word, PowerPoint, etc. The learning curve sometimes can be intimidating. However, I think Apple has so decided to raise the bar in such a way. Microsoft, I'll speak of Microsoft, they have stayed in such a stagnant place where the reliability, familiarity is good. But if you've got an iPhone or an iPad, then you're already kind of dipped into it a little bit. It's just making that last step to a MacBook. So for me personally, what you just described, that may be the straw that breaks the camel's back for me because I do have a relatively new laptop. Of course, it's Windows, but man, Apple they just killing the game. I mean, people say Android, etc., etc. No disrespect, but man, if you're already on iTunes and you're on the family plan and you just all the different things that are there, and then they step it up with this laptop, it's $2,000.
So I would agree with all those points. Very phenomenal spec sheet. One correction for you, Caleb. It starts at $24.99 for the 16
Yeah, for the 16-inch.
Oh, wow.
It can be spec'd up to 2,500 plus for their laptops. So a lot of things that you talked about with Microsoft, I think their leading, matched up product is their Surface line, their Surface laptop. And I do like the touchscreen, but other than that, like I think that this is a no-brainer for people that are creators and do a lot of streaming, editing, things like that. My only question with it is the gaming side of it, because there's a lot of people that have not switched over to Mac because it does everything great except for that. And so they're taunting, I think they said 3 times faster chip than their M1 regular MacBooks.
Crazy though.
Which is incredibly faster, and the GPU is as well 3 times faster. So it should, in theory, tackle all of those issues. Until I see them come out and actually be tested, I wouldn't be anywhere near it. But also, I'm not in the market for anything anywhere near that price point.
So for me, it's kind of hard to justify that kind of money on a laptop, especially when you can get a MacBook Air with the M1 for $1,000, and it's really, really good. But seeing the numbers, just the raw power of this computer, people are saying that it's 6% faster than a computer with a 3060 in it graphics card. It's pretty crazy. But it's just a lot of money, and like you said,
well, the laptop that I have had 2 or 3 years, Caleb, you're familiar with it. And when I think about 3 years ago, that iPad that I got was like $1,800, $1,900. So that is a lot of money. However, it's more powerful, better display. Because you remember I ended up getting what kind of keyboard was that I got for the
bridge keyboard?
I got the bridge keyboard, basically. So now I might touch my laptop for school to do Word documents. Outside of that, I might touch my laptop. I bought it brand new for this program, and I've used it maybe 6 times. The iPad with the bridge keyboard I use every day. And to think that this laptop for about $500 more will be that much more powerful, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I don't know. I mean, so I'm with you on price point. You can go get a lot of different windows, in that field, $500, $400, $600. I mean, top of the line, $900. Yeah. So you are talking double the money, but the reliability, the speed, the continuity on all their platforms. I mean, because, when you buy an Apple product, you get on the cloud and boom, everything is synced. I mean, your phone sees it, your iPad sees it. It's just crazy. I mean, a guy my age, like I could think of my dad, whom you helped get his last iPad. I mean, he worked for IBM, before even Microsoft got big, and he understands Apple, and he's hooked now because it's like, man, everything I have is Apple. It's in the cloud.
Yeah, I would just go back to one thing Caleb said is it's definitely, I don't think there's a lack of justifying it if you are in that space, but the M1 MacBook that they just put out is very, very good for that fraction of the price. So I think most people that are just day-to-day users, send emails, write papers, check, social media things. That is the perfect laptop.
That's probably the one I need. Then Caleb, I need your help. I don't know anything about it.
Yeah. So I mean, unless you're rendering like 3D like scenes and like doing graphical like Photoshop like super serious like high intensity stuff, drawing, trying to game things like that. Like that's when you would need the Pro, and even then, it's a lot more power than you would even need for that. I just say it's kind of hard to justify spending double the money for a laptop that you're not even gonna
Okay,
ever
so
max out.
y'all are right, but you know how this day and time, it's like, and I'm not off subject, but like now, like to me, there was a time where 20-inch rims was like, man, that was like amazing. Now it's like dudes got like 32s and 36s. It's
The
like,
thing
yo,
I would say about this specifically though is
so in
the
this space, I think the people, they overcompensate. They're gonna have something they're never gonna use because they just want the bigger, better, most expensive thing.
but that's what the M1 is, and that's why I'm confused, because people that have a Mac are already that like above and beyond the people that just have a regular old Dell. So it's like,
Right.
oh, you have a Dell. So that that M1 MacBook is already really, really, really,
It's
really
really
good.
good. Like,
Right.
So it's like, oh, you have the new Mac. So I think the Pro isn't going to be like this, like crazy, like it's really for that specific user. Because then you're talking about really just specking out a PC
and
at that point.
from my standpoint, from a very technological standpoint, you're not going to get all the power that you can out of that chip because it's going to get too hot. So with any form of technology, you have to do something with the heat. If you don't do something with the heat, it's going to throttle and slow down that chip. And so from my standpoint, it's like you can put this amazing M1 Max chip in this small body, but you're not ever going to get the full power of it until they put it in a different form factor, which they will eventually do. I mean, that's kind of what their goal is to just put their
So
same
the one
chips.
that I need is what it's called. What again?
MacBook
For people
Air
on
is
the
what I
phone.
would go with.
MacBook Air.
It,
MacBook Air.
Got you.
but yeah, and the thing about Apple is it's gonna last you years. Like my work laptop is a 2015 MacBook Air, and it's still kicking. So
So since y'all decided to get a guy that pre-millennial like me on the broadcast, so in case my parents are watching, the people in my bracket, what do we do if for the last 21 years we've been writing papers and sermons and everything in Microsoft? How do we make the transition? I mean, I know how I do pages
So-
Microsoft
in
is
Word,
on.
yeah,
but
you
if
can
I
get
have
Microsoft.
you can get Microsoft Word on a MacBook.
because like right now I'm on my desktop. Am I going to still use my desktop and have the MacBook, or am I going to end up doing everything on a MacBook?
Let's backtrack. Google should be the primary
Yes.
use because Google has the built-in, cloud capability, so you can collaborate.
Caleb has
you
me
can
on
share
that. I'm still
easier.
baby stepping in it, but he has me on the Google.
If you are going with Microsoft, you can still get Microsoft Office items on a MacBook, but unless you're paying for the subscription, I don't think you can do the cloud sharing. But that's all. Basically, anything that you can do on a Windows usually has a Mac type of app for it.
Right.
So it's definitely a learning curve, and I'm still not a Mac user, but it's definitely not as high as you would think from the outside looking in.
Yeah, like
So just for recap, so for gaming, because I'm not a gamer. So for gaming, did I hear you say that right now there's still really not a use a use
There won't be
for
any gamer person that's gonna say I need a gaming laptop and choose the MacBook Pro, because at that point you should probably just get a PC, and if you really needed a laptop that's mobile, you should get a different like Caleb said with the heat, you should get one that has a dedicated GPU that can handle that type of load. So MacBook is not,
but
that's not their space.
But if you're looking for power, I don't think you're lacking any power, Dad. You have a Radeon 6800.
Hold on, I have something that's supposed to be able to use with games.
Yeah, you have a Radeon 6800, so yeah, so you're good on power.
And the only thing I've ever done is watch YouTube, Facebook, and write papers.
It'll be fine. All right, so we can move on to our music topic for today. We're talking a little further back, but we haven't been able to have conversation with the viewers, talking about the state of music, but specifically the beef or the battle between Kanye West with his Donda album and Certified Lover Boy with Drake. And I'll start with my opinion. I listened to Donda the first time through, was not a fan at all. There was not one song that I was really like, this is a hit. I listened to Certified Lover Boy the first time through, and I was like, out of the 21-ish songs that they had, I was like, there's like 2 or 3 that were like good. Um, but then I re-listened to it a few times, and there are some nuggets in Drake's album. So if we're talking one-on-one, like I had to choose one, it would be Drake. But I would say that in terms of the state of hip hop, J. Cole's was miles better than both of theirs combined. And so I'll leave it at that. We can continue the discussion, but I'll pass it to Caleb.
So I have listened to both of them. Neither is their best work.
Oh yeah.
So I mean, we can just start there. In terms of just mass media, like the popular hit, Drake has that appeal to people and that certain sound, that certain tempo, the certain like upbeat nature of his songs, that is going to appeal to more people. Me personally, and this is a hot take, I think I might prefer Donda just because of the complexity that's in the album. Drake has kind of gotten into this rhythm where you kind of know what to expect. You know the Drake sound, you know he's going to pump out 25 to 30 songs. They're going to be good. A couple of them are going to be really good, but I mean it's easy listening. I feel like with Donda, like I did not like it the first time I listened to it, but the more you listen to it, it's like, okay, that's kind of nice. That beat's kind of nice. The way that he sampled that's kind of nice. And for me, Donda feels like a more refined version of Jesus is King. It's kind of like it's that next progression of, okay, I'm trying to go on this different direction. I'm going a different way with my music. With Jesus is King, it was a really good album, but you can tell there was still some points where he was still trying to figure out how to do it correctly, how to do the whole like uplifting, clean type of music. And I feel like he kind of figured that out with Donda. Um, and that's just me personally. They're both not my favorite albums, but I would say if I'm going to try to just sit down and listen to one straight through as a project, I would probably choose Donda.
Okay, so I think I'm going to surprise y'all. So I have listened to both of them multiple times. Neither of them are their best work, but it's like I'm gonna make a really crazy analogy. So first off, I think the people who are trying to pit them against one another as a beef, I think it's like comparing apples and oranges to me. They're both hip hop, but they're not the same. To me, and that's the analogy I'm going to use, it's like comparing Michael Jackson to Prince and making them beef because they're both phenomenal, but I hear them for who they are. Michael Jackson, though he wrote some stuff lyrically, he was not a musician at all. Michael Jackson was more a performer than he was a music writer and producer. To me, that's the Drake space. Whereas Prince, he played every instrument. I mean, he could do everything on the album himself. I mean, this dude that wrote Donda album, who produced it, Kanye, he can lock himself in a room in a Superdome or something and literally come out with a whole album and never collab with anybody. Not that he didn't, but so to me, they're both on the top of their game, period. Though they're not, like I agree with both of y'all, not their best work by far. But in totality, I can listen to all of Drake. And I'll make another analogy. It's like Chick-fil-A, they know they're Chick-fil-A. So why try to change anything when every time you pass by our stores, we're packed? We have lines. I don't care what time of day it is until we close. And people are still pissed that we're not open on Sundays because we're Chick-fil-A. That's Drake. Drake, when I listen to his album, everything's a banger, but it's exactly the same to me as all the other albums. It's like just another subject or just an adjusted subject or an adjusted beat to a degree. But when I'm listening to Drake, it's like, oh yeah, there's some nuggets there, like Christian said, but it's like, it's Drake. I mean, he just knows that he's Chick-fil-A and people are going to keep coming to get Drake. So I just continue to be Drake. What I noticed about, I agree with you, Caleb, about Kanye. I had to listen to it maybe the second or third time before it's like, the one with Hurricane, he said something about a 16 or $161 million home and I was never there, that kind of stuff. So somebody who's in my age, who's lived and learned a lot of stuff, we're going to talk about relationships in a little while. So to me, I could appreciate it seems as if Kanye's developing some sense of grown and sexy in a hip hop weird Kanye kind of way. So I'm kind of like Caleb. If I'm gonna be attracted to listening to a whole album, now that I'm kind of picking beyond the weirdness sometimes of Kanye, I actually see a lot of development in, you know what, the dude is not just crazy. You know, like you look at Mozart and you look at Einstein, look at all the people who were crazy, but they were geniuses. That's what I hear when I hear Kanye. So if I had to pick a winner, just flat out a winner, Kanye, because of his production, because of, you know, collabing, you know, with the choir thing that he does and then all that, kind of having them sing some stuff. Of course, I'm churchy. So those kinds of things, to me, it gave more depth opposed to Drake. I mean, Drake just kills because Drake kills, period. Like, he didn't do nothing extra or different. He's like, oh, I'm just going to keep it safe and be me. And I mean, and you can listen to every track, and it's like, especially the one on the end with the TSU, you know, when he starts out with the screw to chop, you stood, all stood. Like, what's that song? What song is that?
It's called TSU.
Huh?
It's called TSU.
Yeah, I don't know. It's just if I listen to one over and over, it's like TSU. So when it comes to like just a banger or a hit, Drake has the hits. Kanye don't have hits. Kanye just has more like, you know, listening, appreciating, kind of you in a mental space, or you kind of just trying to process where you've been, some mistakes you made, that kind of stuff. I'm listening to. I know it took a long time to say all that, but yeah, sure. Apples and oranges, they're both good.
So there's a second question, kind of a B part to this question, is like the state of music in general.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, before you get into that, I do want to clarify. So the beef was not from the media. That was directly from essentially Drake had Kanye in the studio and showed him a bunch of music.
Oh, wow.
And Kanye went back and told people that he has a kid before Drake announced that he had a kid. And so he was like leaking his.
And then the beat that he was gonna give Drake is the one he was like poopity scoop. That's the beat he was gonna give to Drake. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kanye was gonna give Drake a beat. And then Kanye went out and leaked that Drake had a kid.
Because in his kid? Yes, and then that's what happened.
I know that.
Yeah, so it's actual between them.
So there's a real beef.
Yeah, yes, and so it's not. I don't think it's like that
but not
crazy,
a
but
beef.
It is. I think it is because Drake was bringing him in. Like, this is one of my idols. He can give me, you know, critique on my music, but then he essentially leaked all what he was working on, some of his music, the stuff, the content of the music to other people. And so that was why they have that.
Yeah.
But moving on to the state of music, and we only have a few minutes. Well, we can spend a little more time on it, but talk about some of my favorite music of this year, and then I can give an opinion of the year. I think that Olivia Rodrigo, Sour, is probably in contention for album of the year. And she's like best new artist. I think that J. Cole's Off Season was great as well. Kenyon Dixon for the R&B, his album was amazing. I thought that Montero by Lil Nas X was also a really good album. So in terms of overall, I don't think that this was an amazing year for music. I know Adele is coming out, I believe, this year. And I believe that Rihanna is kind of teasing some things. I don't know if that'll be this year or next year. Timberlake has really been teasing. I don't know if that'll be the end of this year or next year. So there's some really big hitters that are yet to release their music, especially
divorce first.
especially Adele. So we'll see about that, but it's a solid year of music. But I think with COVID and the pandemic, a lot of musicians are holding back their music because they like to tour with their music. So if they want to tour with their music, they have to release it and it still be hot while they're touring, and they can't tour as much as they want to right now. So that's kind of.
If I may interject just a little bit, being from my era and musically inclined to some degrees and engaged. One thing I have to give to this genre and this generation is something that old school cats older than me would probably not either agree with or go with. And that is, you know, with technology, with digital age, synths, and, you know, when all that stuff kind of started coming out, of course, what do you call it? Auto-tune, etc. there has been like the last decade this dismissal of music now, to say, oh well, back, I mean, this is my uncles, when I was a teenager, like they were pointing to Earth, Wind and Fire and Dance Band and Gap Band and people like that. Like back then, it was real bands, like they played real music, which I agree with. But one thing I have to say about the state of music, just in general, I won't start bringing up different groups, but man, musicality is not dead. I play keyboards a little bit. I play a lot of things. Y'all know, y'all do too. Play things a little bit. There are people doing some phenomenal things with chord structures and arpeggios and just all the different, chord structures and diminished chords and stuff. I mean, like, I listen to even guys like J. Cole, who some people would dismiss as hip hop. He's got some of the coldest musical chord structures and progressions.
And he,
Like, man, that was pretty.
and he produces it too.
So the state of music is really not gone. I mean, especially, you have people coming out like, I mean, I know he's a little bit older, but in the era of a PJ Morton and people like that, I mean, Jasmine Sullivan and people like that, like they're all of them are clicking. I mean, to me, music is just as beautiful as it was 20 years ago. I mean, that's because they're not really actually playing woodwind instruments and strings, etc. But the production is immaculate. I mean, when you listen to some things that Justin Timberlake, even with the, he said there's something coming out, I didn't know that. But I listen, not just saying it because Christian's on and he loves Justin Timberlake. But I mean, I had to respect the fact that, man, his production and those songs that came from Suit and Tie forward, and Strawberry, whatever that was, like, it's like, man, music is still, I mean, Bruno Mars, I mean, people can say what they want to say about him, but I mean, these people are making real music. And then, of course, you get into Moonchild and Snarky Puppy and all these people that are coming out. I mean, those are actually still real bands. And that's why I wanted to get that in there about that.
And I will say, I think that for the past couple of years, my gripe with just mainstream music is that it's all kind of sounded the same.
Right. The trap piece. To me, the trap music thing is dead. Well, not dead. It's just like, it's all the same.
It's kind of played out at this point, even though I don't think it's bad music. I mean, I think there's something interesting for me musically about how some people can make such a simple beat, but it's so catchy and it like moves you so much, like with just an 808 and a snare and a kick, and that can be the entire beat. And that's, that there's something that's just as difficult sometimes as a full band arrangement, for me at least. But I would say this year, what I have noticed is that there's kind of been a shift. And so things aren't all sounding the same this year. And I think that is something that's really got me excited about where music is going, especially with Bruno Mars and Anderson .Paak and Silk Sonic. Like
to me, they flipped it.
I feel like with them coming out with that level of production and intentionality and saying, hey, we were in the studio all 2020, and on November 12th, we're dropping this album, and everybody's going to be mind blown about what we can do with the technology that we have now. I feel like people are going to have to respect that and kind of start switching things up and understand that we can't all keep doing the same thing, even though, I mean, it's lucrative to keep doing the same thing. People notice when you start switching things up and doing things a little bit differently. And that's kind of what I'm hoping people like Justin and Adele are going to be doing in the near future, is kind of saying, okay, we had that, trap for past 4 or 5 years. Now let's kind of switch things up and let's reclaim this new era of music.
Right. I like that.
Like all those thoughts, I intentionally didn't say anything about Bruno because I know Caleb would bring him up. But yeah, we can.
It so happens I did too. Now, I'm just really a 15-second comment. I want to give a flip side because I give all props to music and where it is. I don't want to sound like I'm kind of dumping on this generation because I'm not. I give great respect. The flip side of that is I think on the whole trap piece and everything, it's not play. It's just, and I listen to some of it and I can respect, even that's not really trap, but like even the Baby Bop. I mean, that's a song that I like. But I think that one thing that has happened that is changing this era is because independent labels I mean, if you got the technology, you got a machine or digital capabilities, anybody can make a song. I mean, in their at their desk, you know. So I think it is there is this one element in the state of music that I don't really like is that it's so flooded with so many people that then all of the people that we've noticed or that we recognized earlier, all the names of artists that are really putting out quality stuff are competing with everybody else who spent, you know, an hour in their, you know, at their laptop and put a beat out. And it's like, it's not the same.
And
So I think,
100%.
I think it's both that it's out there.
Go
so,
ahead, Caleb.
and music has always been this sort of R&D replicate and duplicate type of thing, where I mean, you hear something that you like that one of your favorite artists has like put out there, and you kind of make a new take on that. So like that's always been around with from Earth, Wind and Fire to now.
Right. But see, when I was, I mean, I don't want to make this segment long, but man, I'm kind of passionate about that. But see, when I was a teenager, 13, 14, 15, really learned, I knew how to play better then, playing, making songs with my buddies and stuff. The only thing we could hope to do back then, there's no internet, there's no social media, there's no YouTube, there's no music platforms, there's nothing. So, I mean, everything's analog. At that point, the only thing you could hope to do in that era was you could make a demo, you could go to a concert, you could run into who were the people in that day, you know, like a MC Hammer or, you know, I'm going way back, but you understand what I'm saying? You would meet somebody or you would, you know, sit outside the studio and wait till you see Terry Lewis and Jimmy Jam or Babyface walk outside, hand them your tape. Hopefully they listen to a couple of minutes of it and say, this is hot. And then they bring you in and up through the channels. Now, all of those avenues are superseded. Like it's like, hey, you got the equipment and you got some time. You're gonna be approved by anybody. You can put it out there. You can upload it to YouTube, whether it's garbage or not. You know, especially and if it has the same template of the trap with a different catchphrase, like you said, a different hook. Usually it ends up on the radio. It's like, and nobody that really is respected in music. Timberland didn't have to say it's hot. Dre didn't have to say it's hot. Nobody had to say it's hot. It's just out there because I put it out there independently. So I think that is, I love the freedom and the opportunity that it presents to people who are really, really, really good that you never would have heard of if there had not been a YouTube channel. But the flip side of that is that the industry gets flooded with anybody who wants to make a song, like anybody, no matter what, about anything. Anyway, so yeah, we took that segment over. My bad.
It's totally fine. We can go on to our next or main topic. Just it's not really like a title of the topic, but just kind of discussing like the balance that many people, young people coming out of college are facing is just balancing long-term goals with happiness kind of like in the moment. So I'll give an example of like going on a vacation or doing something that, you know, is gonna, you finally get your first job, you can afford to do these things that you couldn't once afford to do. But now you also have to look towards, you know, buying a house, buying a car, saving if you have children, things like that. And so just kind of talking through like what are some of the keys to look for and how to make those decisions,
Right.
like in the best way. And so I think that you would probably have the best perspective of this.
That is a phenomenal million, billion, trillion, quadrillion dollar question because I think that anybody that would be honest is still trying to find the right algorithm for that. There is no surefire plan for how, you know, I've talked to people, counseled with people who seem so impulsive about life, you know, that should be saving, that should be planning ahead. But then there's always this element or this dynamism that says, but I deserve to live. I mean, I'm going to live now. You know, I'm going to do what I want to do now. Tomorrow's not promised. True. But what ends up happening, you still, I love your question because you still have to balance it. So finding that balance where you're not waiting for 5 years to start traveling, and then you find out, God forbid, 2 years from now that you have melanoma or something, and then 3 years from now you're gone and you've never traveled. So I would say that there has to be. I think the best way to plan it is not a science, but it's kind of a template to say, I won't give percent. Well, I will give percentages, but you don't have to stick rigidly to them. But there's a book called Richest Man in Babylon hadn't planned to talk about that part. But the principle that he says is, in order for you to live life in wealth and freedom and happiness, is number one, when you get paid, first off, you pay yourself. Well, he says the other way around. You pay God. Of course, he's a Christian author, but then you pay yourself. And what he says, when he means by pay yourself, is there ought to be, he uses the number 15%. 15% of what you make should go somewhere first, and you're paying yourself. And what he means by that is that's not for like vacations and traveling and concerts and cruises, all the stuff that I like to do, y'all like to do, we like to do, splurging, buying a new fit, buying some J's. Like, no, the 15% is you pay yourself, so that basically, I forgot how the math works, but every so many years you have a year of salary saved. So that's kind of like what we call rainy day. And a rainy day is not just, oh, I feel bad today, I'm gonna take off, I'm gonna go spend some of that money. It's like it's there, it's just accruing for life. He said, and then so basically he goes on to say about 20 or 25%. It goes to those things. So 75% you should just, you live off of. So by the time you pay your bills, etc. And I think that it's really not, the balance comes from really a fiscal financial point of view to say, hey, I can do anything I want to do, go wherever I want to go, if it's on about 75 or 80% of what I actually make. I think that that's kind of a way to start finding balance. And then you start to pick and choose your demons or your splurges based on that, hey, am I still going to have rent and car, et cetera, and insurance? So say 80% I have dedicated to living off of, 20% I have dedicated to paying God or paying myself. So after I pay all my bills, I still got 20% left of that 80. And so that 20% becomes a screw it fund. Hey, do what you do, live. I would say to anybody, if I were you guys' age now, there's some things that there's probably some things I wouldn't have done impulsively like I did, because I've had to pay for those things. I bought a house way later than I probably would have. It's not that I couldn't buy a house, but we always, because we have 5 kids, we always needed more house than our debt to income would allow us to afford if we financed the house. So we always leased a house to have one big enough for 7 people. So, that's kind of one of those things that I couldn't buy a house. But I probably would have been in a position to do that sooner if I had not just always been pushing the envelope. And same thing happens. And then everything else balanced in happiness and relationships and education and career goals. A lot of that stuff just stems from, we probably know half of every, like 6 out of every 10 marriages end in divorce. 80+% of those are unhappy or unbalanced or out of whack based on financial situation. So I think that was, as I kind of contemplated the question before we came tonight, I think that it's just a matter of you determining, this is what I'm going to pay myself and never really touch, and this is what I can live off of, and then anything goes from there to me.
Yeah, and so I was searching for a topic to bring and suggest for us, and so one of the things that me and my significant other discuss is like, we could have a weekend trip away, and I'm like, just balancing, okay, like, do we want to spend $300 to $600 on this 2 or 3 days when we could, focus that towards a, like you said, a rainy day. So I want to balance that happiness of doing things to make her happy, because she deserves it. She works hard. She's a teacher. And like This weekend is our break. We have a 3-day weekend, both of us. And so balancing.
I'll be transparent. I'll throw myself on the bus. Y'all know how I preach. Y'all know how I live. I just put it out there. So, because it may help somebody in the future. By me giving my story. So there were times, of course, y'all know, we made it a point every summer to take y'all somewhere. That was just, and most times I saved for that, so I was ready for it. But just like with any other plan, it always like, you want to stay in a little bit better place, you want to rent a little bit better car, you want to get a little bit better seats at the concert. Why sit in the back when you sit on the second row? It's only $400 more. So. And man, and it's like, we deserve it. We work hard, and you do. And so I would say to anybody that listens to this broadcast, you do deserve those things as hard as you work, as much as you sacrifice. However, is happiness in the moment really happiness if what happened to me happens to you? What I mean by that is, man, we would have a blast. We go to Disney World, we go to this, to the Grand Canyon, we'd be there for a week or a week and a half. But man, I'd get back home and like be like, man, disconnection notices from the electric company. Like, man, like ain't paid my rent. I'm 14 days late on my rent. It's like, man, was it really? I love that word, balance. I should have balanced it. It's not that I shouldn't have gone, but I should have stuck to my budget. I should have stuck to what I said and not pushed it. Because now, as happy as I was for that 1 week or those 10 days, me and my wife and our kids had a blast. But now for the whole next month, me and my wife are fighting because we can't pay the car payment. Or, why'd you spend all our money? Blah, 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 blah. So that's why I love the question. The balance has to be there. Sometimes, you have to ask yourself, is the splurge worth it if you don't know what you're gonna eat next week, or your light's gonna be off, or you're gonna be getting evicted? So then was it really worth it? Happiness to me comes from the balance of I could do it and I could do it. And I get back to work and I'm still good. I mean, that's in latter life, that's been what's been beautiful to me. Like there's bigger things we could have done. We said, well, no, we're not gonna do all that. Like, we could have gone on a cruise a few weeks ago, but we decided, well, no, we're not going to do that. We just going to do this, and it's, instead of being $5,000, it's going to be $1,000. And then we could actually embellish in the moment that, man, that was cool.
Yeah.
And we still got money.
Yeah. And so I've lived, and I'll let you speak, Caleb, if you have anything to say, but I've lived in recently being, blessed enough to have a salaried job.
Right.
In Arizona, there were times where it's like, because you're living alone, there's different bills. But now it's like, I try to, focus on the non-negotiables, which are technically not things that you have to do, but like holidays, weddings, things like that we want to do, we really, really want to do or need to do for our mental health and things.
Right.
And so it's like balancing, okay, yeah, we could afford it. We really can afford it, but where else can we do? Because I've looked at mortgages and what the percentage of a down payment takes.
Oh man.
And that is something that's like, we really have to find ways that we can consistently build that up while consistently building up our quality of life at the same time. And so it's just been a struggle, but not in the negative sense of the word. It's trying to figure out life, and no one really ever figures it out 100%.
And a shameless plug right here. That's no gain to me, but I have to say, when I was you guys' age, and I said it to y'all privately, but I'll say it publicly because it's on a broadcast and hopefully everybody will hear it. If you're in your 20s, early to mid 20s, even late 20s, start saving now. There's stocks, there's bonds, there's mutual funds, there's IRAs, up to 55 or 6,500 a year you can put in that. And now there's this thing called cryptocurrency. If you know nothing about it, you should look into it. Never put in what you can't afford to lose, quote unquote. But I mean, the beautiful thing about it is I'm now at 50 years old trying to do catch up on what I could have been doing for the last 30 years. I mean, so I had a guy, Mason was his name, in the Air Force. He was a financial advisor on the side in the Air Force. I was 22 years old. And he said, if you saved $25 out of every check at 22 years old and put it in this mutual fund that I'm advising you to put it in, he said you would literally have $1.3 million in 20 years. And because of this changing in maturity and the compounded interest, etc. And I was like, yeah, but I didn't want to put $25 somewhere that I wasn't going to be able to get a burger for or go out and have a drink with. And man, now I'm realizing, man, 65 is right around the corner. I need to save. So another place for balance is when you start putting if you're 20, 25, by the time you're 35, you will have not been investing long enough where you have what's called, so I'm getting to the question again, you have what's called passive income. So even when you're going to work and punching a clock, or you're working at the factory, or you're starting your own business, you're not just getting your paycheck. You're looking at your investments and your portfolio and saying, man, I made $400 today. man, I made $8,000 over the weekend. It ran, my so and so ran. And I'm just now experiencing that, like, man, what would it have been like if when I was 25, 28, 30, if I had been doing that 20 years ago, I literally would be rich now. And that this question would even be a question. It'd be like, man, I deserve it. Like I and that's the sacrifice you have to make. $25, $50 here and there. Instead of like, man, instead of buying this weekend, I'm gonna go ahead, instead of going to main event, spending $50 on a movie, I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on the crypto. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on Apple. I'm gonna go ahead and throw that on Cardano or whatever. That also, when you start having kids and a family and getting married, because understand, I got 2 sons right here, man. This day and time, weddings are not cheap. You gotta have a nest egg somewhere because they want the rock, they want the engagement, they want the. Yeah. So that would be another thing, man. For balance, don't spend everything you make. Take a little. When that goes in the pay yourself part. When you pay yourself, you're putting some stuff in savings. Don't just leave it all in a bank account that's paying you 0.02% on your money. Put a little, of that 10%, 15% you pay yourself out of every check. Take maybe 5% of that. Put it in something that's going to be, your risk tolerance is going to matter. Whether you want moderate to low risk or aggressive. But the beautiful thing about being 25, 30, you can go aggressive because you got 30 years, 40 years before retirement age to recover. We can look at anything that was, on the NASDAQ 30 years ago. It's worth more now than it was 30 years ago. So you can just aggressively do that, and man, it pays major dividends.
So what I will say is that my take on the question is really just, for me, how to balance the happiness part with like going able to splurge, do all these different things with like actual life, is that it's important to have a plan and to understand your limitations. And so for me, like I make decent money, but it's not like I'm rich. And so for me, it's really important to know exactly where my money's going, how much is going out, how much is coming in, and what I can afford to do where I'm going to have like that leftover to save and to invest versus that money where I can go take a flight to somewhere or go to Chicago and have fun. And so I think for me it's like apps like Intuit has an app called Mint where it can literally tell you to the cent exactly what you spent for the week, for the month, for the year. And you can make a budget based on um, what you plan on spending, how much you plan on saving. And so for me, it's just I have a plan every month of how much I want to save out of my check, how much I know I'm going to spend on like, cars and groceries and things like that.
Right.
And I am just aggressively every month saving because I know for me right now, it's more important just for me personally to understand that I have enough money moving forward to make my next move. And that's just, I feel like that's just kind of a personal choice. If you feel like right now in your 20s, you want to go and travel, you want to do this, you want to do that, by all means do it. But for me, I am aggressively trying to save enough money so that I know when it's time for me to make the next big move, I have the cash flow to do it. And so part of it's going to a Roth IRA to just save, build over time. Part of it's going to, stocks where I can, if I need to, pull it out. And then part of it's going into a savings account where if I need a chunk of money for, I almost said how much, if I need a chunk of money to to pull out, I can do that.
Nuggets, though.
And so I think for me, it's just have a plan, stick to it. You can never get anywhere without a plan. You wouldn't show up to a basketball game and not have practice, not have a plan in place. And I feel like the same thing is with your life. You can't just live day to day without not knowing, at least to a degree, what your goal is for the next month, the next year. And that's kind of how I've been trying to balance it. Is like I know how much I want to enjoy my life right now, and I feel like I live a happy life. If I want to splurge, you can see I have guitars and I have screens and microphones, and I spend my money on technology because for me personally, that's what I like to do. and I know how much I could spend on that, but at the same time, I know where the limit is so that in 5 years or at the end of the year, I'm not saying I spent this much money on nonsense. So that's just kind of my perspective
But
on the
there's
question.
some money that's spent that's seen as splurging that actually ends in the long run actually ends up saving you money. What I'm saying is the technology, the computer, like for Caleb, I mean for Christian, he said, well, he spends so much money on gaming and on games, etc. But yeah, but he's not running the streets and he's not out at the bars. He's not wasting his money. I mean, once he spends the money to be there in that space, I mean, it's you know that's all I'm saying.
Yeah. And
Sometimes invested in what you know you like a hobby or something like that, is actually once you make that initial investment, it's keeping you from spending random money.
and
If
yeah,
that makes
and for me, it's like the way I look at it is that I use my computers and my music equipment. I could potentially see that being a means for like you said, a secondary or passive
and
income.
it's made you money
I'm
too.
saying
So
it's something that I just got a call last week. Hey, can you make me a graphic or something? Yeah, I can do that because I have the equipment that I've invested in to do that. So not only is it fun for me, but it's also something that I know is an investment into what I like to do. Just like Chris, like with your streaming equipment, although it hasn't blown up yet, eventually, if it blows up,
right,
that's another form of something that that can
and the
bring you.
infrastructure is already
Yeah,
there.
so I mean, it's just kind of making smart decisions on where you're putting your money, and I think that's kind of my philosophy on it.
Yeah, for sure. And so it's funny you said that, Dad, and Caleb, you as well. So all that you're saying, great nuggets. I think I actually learned a lot that I'll be looking into after this. But it's funny I was gonna mention that I started golf lessons a few months ago. So I put quite a nice chunk of money towards golf lessons, but that's something that I should be able to keep with me for 24, 30, 40, hopefully
Right.
years, to be able to enjoy that hobby going forward. And so I've already seen so much improvement in just a short amount of time. And that's something I love to do. And it's an investment kind of to myself of a
Right.
long-term
I mean,
hobby.
how many times have we heard people say, man, I spent X number of dollars,
Yeah.
$10,000 or $5,000 over the last year. I don't have anything to show for it. They were
And
partying, they were here, they were here, they were here, they were here, they were here. And it's like just the money's gone. Opposed to like, like I said, 10 years from now, 15 years from now, like your golf game. I mean, it's something that you've built. You may have some trophies, you might have won some tournaments. And the same thing with Caleb, like you said, just the things that you built with that. So you have to invest in something. You might as well invest in something that's going to be concretely traceable I mean, that's the one frustration I have. And when I look back at my youthfulness, all the things I did that were just random, and I'll never get that back. And one nugget that I have to share that my parents shared, it sums up what I have to say. There is, and I never really heard them. I heard them, but I wasn't listening. There is no such thing as extra money. Period. There's just no such
it's
thing
just money that's
as
not
extra
planned
money.
for.
Like Caleb said, there's gonna come a moment when you need to tap into something happens, especially when you start getting a wife or a husband and children, grandchildren. Something happens, somebody breaks a leg, something happens over here, something happens, your car breaks down, etc. And then it's like, oh, well, you partied for the last 2 weeks. You've only, you had enough to get to work and buy lunch for the next 2 weeks, but you weren't thinking you were going to need a water pump. That money it turns out that money wasn't extra. There's no such thing as, now you can do better with your money, make it perform so that you are generating more residual income so that you can do more things. But just getting a chunk of money and an income tax return or whatever, a bonus on your job for Christmas, say, oh man, I got an extra $500. Not extra, boo, because once you spend it, almost like clockwork, something's going to happen where you wish you had that $500.
I will say that is a true statement in our tax brackets. Now, LeBron.
Well, yeah, no. Let me qualify. I was trying to keep it. I was trying to summarize it, but they did say for working class, middle class people, there's no such thing as extra money. Now, of course, we know once you get upper middle class, upper class. Obviously, I mean, you got so much sitting around. I mean, you're making money in your sleep. They have extra money. But people like us who are living from check to check, some of us have moved beyond check to check, but you still can't miss a check and not feel it. There's no such thing as extra money for us.
100%. 100%. So we spent a lot of time. Kib, you have anything else to say? I saw your.
One last thing I will say is that, for me at least, I would say it's always good to aspire for more. It's always good to aspire for more money,
Always.
for more, a better house, a better
Always.
car, all those different things. But you can't let that stop you from utilizing the resources that you have right now. A lot of
Right.
the things that I've read and a lot of things that I've like watched on YouTube, like the resources are out there, but the biggest generator of wealth that any person has is their monthly or weekly check, their income. Use what you have and start making smarter decisions with that money, and you
Right.
will start to see that things will plan out better if you have a plan for that. But you can't be so stuck on what you don't have or what you can't achieve right now that you let that stop you from building towards that next step. So
Nugget.
that's my thing.
That's
Powerful
great.
stuff, man.
All right, so let's get into our outro. One thing I thought was really fun and light to end our season 0 was One Gotta Go. And so we might have talked about this in the past, but I think since COVID happened, a lot has changed in the realm of social media. So our One Gotta Go for this week is social media. And so this would have been better with a larger group, but we have
It's
Twitter,
hard though.
Snapchat, Instagram, and Facebook. I would put TikTok, but I don't think that us three are TikTok users, so that is
I have a
probably
TikTok, but I don't. Yeah.
um I would say I'll start. I to touch on TikTok, I really enjoy it. Every time I am looking at videos, I think it's very funny and
Well, people
light.
send me videos and they're funny, but I don't
Yeah.
like. I don't
Exactly.
serve. I don't serve
Exactly.
TikTok. Yeah,
And so this is very, very difficult
it's hard for me,
since
man.
COVID. So I honestly think that Facebook is my least of those four, but the reason that it's so important or valuable is the family aspect. And
Right.
so seeing cousins, aunts, uncles, grandparents,
Right.
everyone is on Facebook. So I honestly don't know. It's almost like a coin flip. I think that for me, Twitter is the most well-rounded, where you can get sports updates. I have alerts that go off for releases of consoles that I might be trying to get for my job and stuff like that. So Twitter is the most well-rounded. Snapchat is the most, I, I don't, I'm afraid to admit this, but I'm a very like lurking type of person. I'm kind of nosy, but I'm not in people's business. So like I like to see what everyone else is doing. And Snapchat allows me the ability to do that. So I would say Instagram is probably my choice of gotta go. Because my major gripe with Instagram is it's all the best that life has to offer. And what I mean by that is no one on Instagram for the most part is posting like the sadness or the downfalls of things that they've gone through. It's all like I'm on vacation, I'm in Miami, I'm in Vegas, I just got this new thing. It's not a place that has realism and like the day-to-day struggle of people. And so that's why Instagram would have to go for me.
I would say for me, Snapchat can go just because it has a very limited functionality. I feel like a lot of these other social media platforms have kind of overlapped just as a means of market share and trying to get people to use their platform. And Snapchat has kind of gotten to a point where there are things that Snapchat does that Instagram and Facebook and Twitter can also do. And so like with stories and things like that, like people post Instagram stories just as much, if not more, than Snapchat stories. I mean, you can private message and it vanishes, but you can do that on Instagram and you can do that on Facebook. And I don't know if Twitter has the like private messaging feature yet, but I'm pretty sure that they will add it. And so for me, I think Snapchat can go just because of its limited functionality. It's a messaging app basically for me.
If I could defend Snapchat just a second, if you're an Android user, Snapchat has got to go first of all because it's terrible. But but Snapchat started that. They laid the groundwork of that realm, and so the stories and all that Facebook copied, and Facebook and Instagram are the same company. And the filter realm, no one is touching Snapchat, and the filters, the ability to add all the extra things to your videos and things like that. A lot of people, if you see them, if they're at concerts and they're just taking pictures, they don't even go to their camera app anymore. They go straight to Snapchat because they can just download it, save it, add the filter all right there in the spot. So I think it's more than just the social media aspect of Snapchat. It's the ability to make good pictures with filters and things like that. And then there's things with kids, you know, the dog ears and all that stuff. So I think it's just more well-rounded than the Instagram that has copied a lot of what Snapchat has done. You could go.
I use a lot of time in all the other places, so I'm going to be real quick. So I think I agree with Caleb in my one's got to go. It would, maybe not for the same reason, but I would say Snapchat. And I just want to say, touch on what Christian said very quickly. What's weird for me is I use Facebook the most, but I like it the least. I use Twitter the least, but I like it the most. And that's all I'll say about Facebook. There's just too much junk and emotion and mess on Facebook. But as a pastor who's trying to promote a brand and our services are being streamed, pandemic, you know, I think it's kind of cheesy now that everybody's doing it. We were doing it when nobody was doing it. And they told us that it was basically like sacrilegious was what people were telling us at Friendship and Emmanuel when we were on Facebook, like who puts church on Facebook? It's like, that doesn't make any sense. You know, you ought to just, you know, you're going to make people not want to come to church. And then nobody could go to church. It's like everybody's on Facebook. Like, haha. But outside of those functions for me and family, it's Facebook, man. It's just like, like I hate Facebook. Like sometimes it's like, I hate Facebook. It's like everybody has like an agenda and like low key shade. It's like, it's just But Twitter, like you said, all the different broadcasters, sports, you know, media updates, etc. But I don't really use Twitter. That's just me. I don't really use it. But Snapchat, for the sake of the conversation, I don't use it enough.
And one thing that I will add, Reddit's better than all of them.
Reddit is very.
I've seen it, but I don't know what it is.
It's a very niche market of it. I enjoy Reddit, but it's also can be much worse as well because it's not as regulated. So, I think we got to wrap it there. We've reached kind of our time. I think this is a very interesting discussion across all of our topics.
Yes, sir.
But any last points from either of you two before we wrap it up?
No, I just want to say commendation. Hats off to you, Chris, for the Guys Podcast. I think it's a wonderful thing. I think your passion and your aim for it, to have a safe space to just talk and just kind of say what you feel about a lot of different things. It's awesome. Thank you for having me.
Of course, thank you. Always. Caleb?
I'm good.
Awesome. Well, thank you all for joining us. We appreciate you taking the time to watch and enjoy. And MySpace, you got to make a comeback. We'll see y'all next time. Peace out. Thank you for tuning into the Guys.
Sit back, turn it up and let it ride. Tune in any day or any night. You need to hit the like and please subscribe right now, 'cause you hang